Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for everybody that's joining us today for our webinar. Let me just pull up my notes here. All right. So thanks everybody for taking their time out of their day. With the launch of Ballot Bliss and the popularity that we've seen so far with it, what we're doing is we're hosting an educational series of webinars aimed at providing insights into some of the most common types of community association related voting scenarios. Today's session will be all about elections. And the way that we're doing this is the first half of the presentation is going to be mostly educational with a demonstration towards the end. If you've joined us for webinars in the past, we are going to be talking about some newer features that we've introduced just recently as well, so stay tuned. Also, this is a presentation, so your mics will be disabled, but please feel free to put any questions you have into the Q&A section, and we'll be circling back at the end to answer those questions. But before I jump in, for any who are unfamiliar with Ballot Bliss, we were founded just last year, but we're partnered with Polera Software, which is our parent company, and they're a well-known association management software that's been in the industry for over 18 years. We're also part of CAI, CACM in California, and a number of other industry-specific organizations. And speaking of CAI, we will actually be at their national conference next week in Orlando. So if anybody attending happens to be going, we would encourage you to stop by and say hi. We'll be at booth 620. A little about me. My name's Shay, and I've been in the HOA and property management industry for over 8 years, but I've worked in sales and customer service for over 12. Prior to this, I worked for Fidelity Investments for a number of years. And it also happens that our CEO and our lead developer were both with Fidelity for over 10 years. So we bring an enterprise level mentality to everything that we do. But that's enough about me. So during this webinar, I'll be providing some information about the common pitfalls and how you can be more proactive when it comes to community elections. But before I do, what is a community election? So a community association happens when a developer decides to form a nonprofit corporation to own the land and amenities, and in the case of condos, certain parts of the exterior of a building. Once owners begin to occupy those units, they're then asked to form a board of directors. And this is where an election comes into play. So at that point, all homeowners of the community will then vote for those who will be appointed as the board of directors. So why would a community elect a board in the first place? So being a nonprofit organization means that the association has certain privileges, but also must be compliant with certain legal regulations. Electing a board of directors means that the association has put their trust in these individuals to make sure that the community is compliant with any legal requirements, but also gives them the authority to make decisions on the association's behalf, such as with capital expenditure projects or updates to bylaws and budgets and so forth. Next, I'm going to explore some of the common mistakes that associations make when it comes to elections. And one of those being insufficient candidate information. So when considering a new board member, it's important for the homeowners who will be voting for them to know their qualifications. And it's a common issue that homeowners are provided with the means to place a vote, but they have limited to no information about the actual candidates that they're voting for. Another pitfall is poor communication. So not notifying your residents about an upcoming election is almost always going to lead to poor turnouts and missed quorum. Another factor to consider is transparency in the election process. So trying to use non-voting specific software like, for example, Google Docs or Microsoft Teams or things of that nature for conducting elections is sure to sow distrust within the residents just because they're not specifically designed for voting. The overall security of how an election is run can also lead to poor turnout. So if the residents don't feel confident in the services being used, they just simply won't use them. It's also important to have a clear and concise design for the election form. If there's any confusion or uncertainty on how to place their vote, residents may opt to not do it at all. One easy way to decrease residents' confidence in a vote is by having errors in the results, especially when electing board members. Imagine finding out that someone was elected that shouldn't have been, and then having to go through the hassle of having to have it corrected. Not something that I would want to personally have to deal with, and this can also cause delays in the overall process. Next, I'll be discussing some of the ways that you can be more proactive as a ballot administrator to help generate positive outcomes for your communities. And one simple way to get better outcome is to promote the vote. So all too often, I hear about elections failing due to not having residents be aware of it actually happening. Some of the ways you can be more proactive is by hosting meetings or town hall events where residents can ask questions about the candidates in advance. Having separate bios for the candidates that can be attached to any outbound messaging is another great option. And of course, the earlier that you can start providing these options to residents, the more time they will have to consider and make their choices when the time comes. Communication. So communicate frequently. The more that you communicate about an upcoming election, the better your odds will be at success. Having the ability to reach residents in more than one way and in their preferred language can go a long way to getting better engagement. Try to space out your communications leading up to the vote and steer clear of using any kind of jargon or slang. Doing so will help increase the credibility and promote engagement from residents. Also, being proactive prior to the election is important too, but it's equally important to continue being proactive throughout the voting process. Boards will appreciate knowing if the results are close to being met without knowing what they actually are. Once the vote is concluded, it's important to also provide the results to the board in a timely manner and in formats that'll be easy for them to digest. As a ballot administrator, it's also your responsibility to help guide residents through this process. So offering yourself as a resource both before and during the election, creating various help articles or FAQs, and providing multiple ways to place votes are all great ways to offer guidance to your residents. Some associations conduct elections differently than others, so it is important to know the method for which the results are being tabulated. Having an online system that can automate this process can reduce the time needed to provide those results, therefore instilling more confidence in the ballot administrator. Being able to do things like restrict one vote per unit ensures that there's no duplication of voting. Cumulative voting lets residents spread their votes across multiple options, giving them more flexibility and voting power. And percentage of ownership makes sure that each unit is counted accurately against the voting population, if it's applicable. So now that we've discussed what an election is for, some of the common mistakes running elections, as well as some of the ways we can be more proactive, now we're going to discuss how we can leverage technology like Ballot Bliss to make our lives easier and work towards a better turnout. And just a little quick tidbit before I move into the demonstration portion. It has been shown that organizations that offer an online means of voting can expect to see up to an 8% increase in the overall participation. And so just think about communities where you haven't used it before. You could be looking at a potential of up to 8% increase just by using the extra option of online voting. And that goes for all industries, not necessarily just community associations. So it's important to note that the rules about how an online vote can be conducted can be influenced by a number of factors, including state and local regulations, as well as community bylaws. Ballot Bliss has done extensive research to make sure our system can support your needs. And at this point, I'm going to show you that by hopping over to our demo community. So just bear with me here. Okay. So here's our fictitious Franklin Street HOA. I'm logged in as my, my administrator, Mr. Map Manager. And this is what you as an administrator would expect to see And I'm going to show you first by going over to our settings dropdown, and the ballot admin area is where the magic happens. So this is going to bring up my ballot dashboard, and some things to point out real quick here. We are enterprise, as I mentioned, mentality. So everything we do is built with the idea that you might have multiple communities or multiple organizations that you're using our system for. So if you're a manager, for example, that manages multiple properties, you can see right now I'm looking at Franklin Street HOA, but I can quickly, sift between the different communities that I'm managing my ballots for from this dashboard. And from here, you'll see I have a few different examples listed to show you different scenarios. But what I'm going to do first is just show you what the settings of a ballot and structuring it is like in our system. So to do that, I'm going to select Create Ballot here. And you'll start by naming it, and that's pretty straightforward. Whatever the name of it is, election, bylaw amendment, what have you. There's a place to add a description if needed, which you can include any kind of images or files into if you need to. And then down below is where you actually dictate what happens. So in this case, we're doing this as a demonstration for community associations. So we do have the idea of owners, board members, other occupants, and tenants. It will restrict you to 1 vote per unit, but that can be disabled if, say, you were trying to do a survey or a poll out of the system. Otherwise, if you were just doing it to owners and board members, you can make sure that only 1 vote per unit is cast. We did introduce a secret ballot option, which will, as it is stated here, basically completely disconnect any information that can tie a vote to the person who cast it. And that goes for not just the ballot administrator themselves, but also for us as the developer of the software. So if there was ever a situation where, say, an association was being subpoenaed to provide a result, we ourselves as the developer could not go back and tie a vote back to the person that cast it. And that's more of a legality thing because we've encountered states where that was necessary to make sure that it was considered a completely, truly secret ballot. Some other things you can do is we have the idea of a quorum tracker, which is basically right now the way it works is if you know that you need a certain amount of votes against the population to reach quorum, you can plug that number in here, and that'll show up in the list view that we were looking at a second ago to tell you how close you are to reaching quorum. We do support percentage of ownership. So if you have weighted units, those can be factored into the charts and results. And you can also factor that into the quorum tracking as well. In this case, this community does not have percentage of ownership. There's no values for that, but if there were, it would also have me confirm it to make sure that the values add up to the correct amount. And then I can set the start and end date of the ballot. So, when it should actually be votable by the voting population. Now, this is not what activates the ballot. This is just what tells when they can actually place their vote on it. So to my point earlier about being able to let people vote or look at the ballot, look at the ballot, not vote, before the ballot has been opened, you could set it for a future date and you could still activate it, in which case you could then send it to the residents so they can review it in advance of the actual date that they can vote on. The system's smart enough to know that if they try to access it from there, that it'll tell them that they have to come back at such and such date and such time to place their vote. And then finally, here in the settings area, we can also add in a custom terms and acceptance checkbox that they would need to check in order to place their ballot. You have specific verbiage that you want them to acknowledge before submitting it. All right, so back over to the presentation. We do also keep an audit trail that will show you which ballot administrator, also if there were more than one, and when it was accessed. And in the event that the ballot was made to be hidden, until it was archived, it will prompt the ballot administrator to acknowledge that they're unsealing the results. And that does show up in the audit trail. If there was a scenario where, say, they unsealed the results prior to the vote ending, that would show up in the audit log, and they can't delete those audit logs. So what that does is that provides extra accountability if, say, the integrity of the ballot was ever called into question, when those results were accessed by whom, and so forth, so that you can provide full transparency to the board and to the residents. So let me show you how that works. So back over to our ballot admin area, and I'm going to go back to my list. And here we can see an election that's already in progress with results already in there. And then here's my history. So this history is the audit log that I was referring to. And you can see here, it records everything that happens from the point where the ballot itself was unlocked, where results were unsealed. And then even if, say, you know, in this case, this administrator had to go in and, apologies, had to go in and delete a result, which, by the way, can only be done if it's not a secret ballot, if needed. So everything's time-stamped, shows the email and the name of the administrator that did anything in there. As I mentioned earlier, it is important to provide residents with a clear and concise way to make their selections. If it's too cumbersome or if they can't figure it out, they just likely won't vote. So with Ballot Bliss, we provide an easy way to structure your elections so they're easy to understand and very straightforward. So let me show you how that works. So back to our list here. And I already showed you the settings area. The next is the edit or ballot builder. And so here's an example of one that's already been built out. But the way it works is when you start building out your form, we have what are called components. And the components are based on what type of questions are being asked. For example, in this case, with the election, we did it as a multi-choice because that's what you would expect down here. In this case, actually, this is a single choice, so I apologize, but I can show you what that multi-choice looks like. So multi-choice would be, and the reason we did this as single choice is because this was meant to be for voting on one seat. So if you wanted them to only be able to select one option, but if you say had multiple seats that you wanted them to be able to vote on, you can put how many seats need to be voted on and the options. And it's as easy as just dropping in those components. This is an example of a formatted text box, which you can see I can drop in images, links to separate bios, tables, different font styles, even HTML, if you know how to do that. And so this is basically how you build out your form. And I can move these components around as needed if the ordering of them needs to change. And then also, if I want to, I can do a quick preview as well, which will show me what the residents would actually see when they access it. So one part of running an election that other voting softwares tend to fall short on is the ability to communicate effectively with the voting population, leading up to the vote date and during the voting period. With Ballot Bliss, you can send outbound emails and physical mailings, and we'll soon be also introducing text. When you send a ballot invite to a voter, they will receive an email with a randomly generated secure link and code. Once the link is accessed and the code entered, they will be brought directly to the ballot to place their vote with no need to log in. Physical mailings can be downloaded in PDF format and sent manually, and those will include a different link as well. And we also track all the outbound communications from our system. So you can see if the emails were delivered, opened, bounced, and then once text is available, we'll also be able to tell you if that's been successfully delivered or not. So let me hop over and show you how that works. So this is our election. Now let's just say that we haven't started this yet, but we want to go ahead and send it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back over to the portal area here, and I'm going to go to our communications drop down, and I'm going to select to send an announcement. Now that ballot has already been made active, and what we're going to do is we're going to select the ballot invite. And you'll see there's our election. When I select it, what it's first going to do is it's going to default, and this is something that we built in recently, is the ability to only send it to those who haven't voted. Now, initially, when you first do it, you would just send it to the entire community, but then if you want to send reminders thereafter, prompting them to continue voting, you can make sure you're only sending it to those who haven't voted. In the ballot settings, we said that only owners should be able to vote on this. So you can notice that I can't change this. This is default based on what we set in the actual ballot itself. And then down below is where I actually structure the message. So the way this works is you do have the ability to create a template. So if you have the same reminder message that you just want to keep rehashing each time, you can create a template which will pre-fill. Otherwise, it's as simple as just checking off what you're trying to do, email, physical mail, and again, as I mentioned, we'll be introducing text very soon. And then the subject of that might be please vote now, something like that, and then follow instructions below. And you can even send yourself a quick test email just to make sure that that looks right before you send it out. And this is where you can select to download that PDF as well. To show you an example of that, I do have one here. So here's the link that I was referring to. So these links are randomly generated and the code as well. And then what happens is once I click on this, it's going to bring me to a page where it'll prompt me to enter that code. And then I'm not going to do this, but once I enter that code, it'll bring me straight to the ballot that I just had showing you guys to place my vote. Actually, I should be able to do it for you guys. Let me show you. Hopefully it doesn't kick me out of any other sessions that I'm logged into. There it is. So another thing just to point out real quick too is that residents can choose if they want to receive a receipt. And then here's our ballot down below where I can place my choice, accept any terms that are included, and then submit my vote. All right. So part of running a successful election is having an easy and accurate way to pull and share results. So with Ballot Bliss, depending on if you selected for the ballot to be secret or not, you'll have access to see results as they're actually happening in real time. So let me show you what that looks like. And actually, let me get back over to our ballot admin area. Okay, so here's our election again. And you can see that there's results. And actually, that result that I just submitted there it is. It just popped right in there as I refreshed this. This is in the cloud, by the way. So, it'll refresh with the cloud when you are navigating through it. And we provide visual representations. And right now, this is based on an election that's not weighted. If it was weighted, then I'd have a checkbox here where I can check off to include the weighted result into this chart as well. It shows me the whole voting population of numbers that votes that have been cast. And then there's also a table area where, and again, in this case, this is not a secret ballot. So as an administrator, I can see who and what they voted for. Here's where I can pull various reports. If I need to, I can also pull a redacted report, which will make sure that it doesn't include who and only shows the what, if you need to provide those results to the board. You can pull PDF audit files, which shows each vote in its own PDF print sheet, so to speak. And I can also include ownership percentage if it was part of my ballot. Now, if this were a secret ballot, I would only have the option of a redacted, and all of the identifiable information would be removed from this area when I'm viewing it. Another thing that I can do is I can go into the participation area, and I can see just those who have and have not voted. So if I wanted to pull a quick report of all those who haven't voted, for whatever reason, I can do that from here as well. Right. And our most recent enhancement to the platform is the ability to let residents vote cumulatively. I always mess up saying that word, cumulatively, which isn't always the case, but it's good to have if you need it. This option lets you basically split the number of votes allowed across multiple options, such as with an election where, say, 3 seats are being voted on, but the owners are allowed to divvy those 3 votes towards which candidates they see fit. So I do have an example to show you guys of that as well. So if I go back over to my list here, so here's our cumulative one. And I copied the same information as we did on the other election, except I dropped it in as cumulative. And the way to see how that works is I'm going to do a quick preview. And notice how, in this case, each candidate has a drop down now. So what I've said is I want there to be up to 3 options they can choose, but it's cumulative, meaning now they can put what voting power they have of the 3 votes towards which candidates they want. So if your community does have that need, we do support it. So in summary, with an online voting system like Ballot Bliss, you can send messages in residents' preferred method and language, track their engagement with message delivery analytics, build your ballots based on your community's unique needs, track the progress of your votes with quorum tracking, reduce risk with features like secret ballots, weighted votes, and cumulative voting, and the ability to see results with visual charts and downloadable reports. And of course, the result of this should be hopefully happier residents. Having the additional option of being able to place their votes remotely, as in the situation of someone who maybe doesn't live at their unit year-round, does make this a very powerful solution. So here's a testimonial from one of our clients that's been using our voting for a few years, actually. They had an 80% turnout on their last election due to the convenience of having it online. So that was a successful situation. This is a more recent testimonial from a client with First Service after we helped their association reach quorum for the first time since the community was created over 20 years ago. So they were super happy about that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, one of our best qualities is providing excellent customer service. In a recent survey to our clients, they rewarded us with a 98% overall satisfaction rating. So to any of our clients in attendance, we do thank you and we love you. Thank you. And if you're interested in learning more or discussing Ballot Bliss further with a specialist, we do encourage you to schedule a one-on-one session. We will be providing a $25 gift card as a thank you for anyone who schedules and attends a follow-up demo with one of our specialists. This link right here is also up on our website at ballotbliss.com. And if you're ready to move forward with Ballot Bliss, if you have a community that's wanting this option and wants to go ahead and move forward, it's as easy as navigating to our pricing page, selecting the number of units in your community, and then selecting the plan that fits you. And I'll show you that real quick. So ballotbliss.com is the website. Here's the link to book a demo. And then on our pricing page, super easy. You just come in here, put up to the number of voters that are in your community, and then we have a per ballot or per election option. And so just to clarify, when I say per ballot, I don't mean like per vote. That would be a single election or single voting scenario, like a bylaw amendment or declaration amendment. And then we also offer an unlimited annual option where you can have unlimited use for as many different scenarios that you need throughout the year. And basically, we will do the work of importing your resident data into our system and providing the necessary training. Once set up, the voting process is quick and easy for residents, as I showed you. And the end result is increased participation, trust, and an overall faster option for making community decisions. Awesome. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and answer any questions that were posted. If you have any still, feel free to drop them in there. Any that we don't get to in this webinar, we'll definitely be following up with after as well if we need to. On that note, let me go ahead and pull up the Q&A. Okay, so someone asks, is there an option for voting for quorum only and for write-ins? The quorum only, I guess I would need a little more clarification on what you mean by that, because so, you know, collecting the votes is no different regardless of what your quorum requirements are. The only difference that you know, our system makes is if you select it as a you know, weighted vote versus not. So if you know, you have that scenario, you have to make sure you check that off in the settings. And then as far as write-ins, so we do have, you know, a solution for that. Oh, sorry, let me get back over here to our ballot admin area. So one of the components that you can add is just a single line answer. So this opens up the ability for them to actually put in, you know, just type in something. So if you want to give them, you know, an option to do a write-in candidate, then it would look like this. So then they would have that extra option there. Okay. Does this work with any HOA softwares currently? So we're not integrated with any other voting softwares, but we do have integrations with accounting services. So, you know, I think I mentioned at the beginning that our parent company is Polera Software, and the integrations that Polera, you know, supports works for Ballot Bliss as well. And, you know, just to give some names that you might be familiar with, we work with QuickBooks, we work with VMS, Vantica, Caliber, Enumerate, GenArc, among others. So, and basically the benefit of those is that we can bring in your resident data that way. Otherwise, the import process is pretty straightforward too. It's just, you know, if you have your resident data already exportable into an Excel format, all we really need is just the names, emails, and you know, the unit information to be able to import that. So that does work that way. Okay, so the person who posted the question about quorum only, so you gave some more clarification. We have an option if someone does not want to select any candidates that they can do quorum only and are not weighted. Okay, so that would be like the equivalent of abstaining, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially, you know, what you would do is if you wanted that to be included towards the quorum, you know, AKA the final result, but not, you know, an actual candidate, you can add that in as an additional option. So I would just go in and I would add abstain as, you know, an additional option they can choose from. Then that counts towards the quorum tracking without it being, you know, not an actual candidate. I think it looks like that answers someone else's question. What if someone abstains from making a selection? So, and it wants it to be part of the quorum. And yes, to answer the person that was asking about Polera. So Polera is our parent company, and they do a lot more than just voting. So Ballot Bliss is the company that we created because we also support, voting needs for outside of the association management industry, such as with, membership organizations or, any other scenario where an organization might have to vote online. So that's why we created Ballot Bliss. Let's see if there's any other questions. So if we don't meet quorum, can we extend the voting end date? So the way we're approaching this right now is that if you're using our system, even if it's just for a single election or single, ballot, we are allowing you to have access to the system for up to a year for that ballot or for that election. In which case, if say, for example, this reached the end of the date that you had selected, let me just hop back over here real quick. So for example, we set this for the 9th, right? But we get to the 9th and we haven't met quorum. And if your bylaws allow you to extend the voting period, it's as simple as just coming in here and doing it. And that won't affect any of the existing results in the system. Someone asked, how do truly secret ballots work? So I did mention about us making it truly secret. So just for extra clarification on that, basically in the results, and just so you guys are aware, we prompt any manager that's trying to access results for any ballot, whether it's secret or not, to unseal them, regardless, just so that we can log that in the history as I showed you guys, the unsealing part. But if it's checked as secret, some of the things that we've done is, to ensure the anonymity is in the charts area, we will actually remove, and I have to double check on the number, it's either 3 or up to 5 results from it. So that, for example, a manager couldn't go in and look and see, oh, someone just voted, and then go to the chart and be able to connect the dots and say, oh, that must be that person because they were the most recent person to vote. To the same effect in the table area, again, this would be removed, anything that's identifiable. If it's a percentage of ownership situation, that gets removed. Basically, anything that could tie a person back to the vote in question is removed from these areas. Awesome. And on that note, that concludes, it looks like that's all the questions, but obviously if anybody has follow-up questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us. Let me just hop back over here. So, get my notes back up. All right. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time. And as I mentioned, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at sales@ballotbliss.com or submit for a demo if you want to find out more. We're happy to help you out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.